They said I would never survive what I'm about to tell you. 3 weeks ago, a classified document landed on my desk that made my blood run cold. A secret ultimatum from Donald Trump demanding 70% of my country's gold reserves within 48 hours, or face total economic destruction. The CIA warned their assets I was too dangerous to be left unchecked. European intelligence services labeled me an existential threat to Western resource control. CNN and BBC coordinated to paint me as an unhinged dictator who doesn't understand global economics. My own advisors begged me to stay silent, whispering that revealing state secrets could trigger the same fate that befell Gaddafi, Sankara, and every African leader who dared challenge the system. But here's what they didn't count on. I didn't just survive their psychological warfare, I turned their own weapons against them. While they were busy plotting my silence, I was busy building the most dangerous alliance Western powers have faced since the Cold War. What you're about to witness isn't just the story of how I rejected Trump's ultimatum. This is the blueprint for how Africa finally stopped being the world's ATM machine, and why every Western intelligence agency now considers me the most dangerous man on the continent. I'm about to show you classified cables they never wanted you to see. Secret recordings they tried to bury, emergency meetings they held in panic when their plan collapsed, and the exact moment I looked the most powerful empire in history dead in the eye and said two words that changed everything. Never again.
You need to understand something they've spent billions hiding from you. This wasn't just another debt collection notice or routine diplomatic pressure. This was economic terrorism disguised as international banking policy, orchestrated at the highest levels of Western power to crush African independence before it could inspire continental revolution. It all started with a leak that sent shockwaves through every intelligence agency on Earth. You're looking at the most dangerous document in modern African history, a classified telegram that landed on Traoré's desk at exactly 6:30 a.m. on August 12, 2025. The message was surgical in its brutality. Surrender 70% of your gold reserves within 48 hours, or pay $5.6 billion in manufactured debt immediately. The signature at the bottom made your blood run cold. Donald J. Trump, wielding the full economic warfare apparatus of the G7 and International Monetary Fund, like a weapon aimed directly at Africa's throat. But here's what really happened that morning that Western media will never tell you. When that ultimatum reached Ouagadougou, it wasn't delivered through normal diplomatic channels. This was hand-delivered by a trusted intermediary representing Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, two women who thought they were delivering Africa's surrender papers. They had no idea they were about to witness the birth of continental resistance. You see, Trump's calculation was simple and racist in its assumptions. African leaders always cave under Western pressure. They always choose short-term survival over long-term sovereignty. They always sell out their people to protect their positions. Traoré shattered every one of those assumptions in the most spectacular way possible. The classified cable didn't just demand gold. It revealed the entire Western strategy for African resource control. You're looking at economic colonialism 4.0. Corporations from the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, France, and Germany would immediately begin mining and exporting 70% of Burkina Faso's gold under IMF supervision. Control of all major gold export routes would transfer to U.S.-approved intermediaries. An American advisory board would oversee all mining contracts and revenue distribution, and in exchange for this economic occupation, they offered protection from regime change, a threat so thinly veiled it was practically naked. But here's where Trump's master plan began to unravel. The most powerful man in Burkina Faso wasn't some corrupt puppet who would fold under pressure. Traoré had been preparing for exactly this moment since taking power. You see, for months before Trump's ultimatum, a massive secret had been hidden beneath the sun-scorched plains of northern Burkina Faso. Not rumors or speculation. Verified geological data confirming colossal deposits of untapped mineral wealth. The survey had been conducted by a covert task force established by Traoré and encrypted by North Korean tech specialists. Everything was sealed until Western surveillance satellites detected unusual energy signatures over the Sahel. Within 48 hours, U.S. intelligence had traced equipment shipments from Iran and Venezuela, and soon the signals of gold lit up on their screens like a treasure map. That's when panic set in across Western financial centers, because by then, Burkina Faso had already reclaimed control of its gold mines from Western corporate hands, quietly expelling G7-backed contractors and replacing French and American-controlled companies with national military units. The revenue was no longer flowing to Paris. It was being redirected into domestic development funds controlled by Africans for Africans. You can imagine the emergency meetings in Washington, London, and Paris. Here was a nation rich in gold, not managed by Wall Street, not answering to European capitals, not bowing to Western demands, but backed by its own people, its own army, and its own revolutionary vision. This wasn't just defiance. It was a blueprint that could inspire every African nation to reclaim their resources, and that terrified them more than any military threat. When Trump's ultimatum reached Ouagadougou, it carried the arrogance of empire disguised as business correspondence. The document was marked Debt Recovery Strategy Framework, but you could smell the extortion through the diplomatic language. The demands were listed with bureaucratic precision: 70% of gold production handed over to U.S. mining giants, and IMF-appointed managers under the label gradual debt repayment. Control of export routes transferred to U.S.-approved intermediaries. American oversight of all future mining contracts. And at the top of the document, handwritten in thick red ink, was a note that revealed the true nature of this operation. Traoré has 48 hours. This wasn't diplomacy. It was a declaration of economic war. But here's what Trump and his G7 allies completely miscalculated. The man they chose to intimidate had already made his decision long before their ultimatum arrived. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré read that classified cable, witnesses say he remained completely calm. He read it twice, set it aside, stood up, and said flatly, "So this is how they collect a debt. Poison in a suit and tie." What happened next sent shockwaves through every Western intelligence agency monitoring the situation. Traoré didn't call the G7. He didn't call the IMF. He didn't negotiate or beg or offer compromises. Instead, he called the commander of his Special Sovereignty Force, a covert military unit created for exactly this moment. The orders were issued with military precision: lock down every gold field, double security on all gold convoys, cut off all data flows to foreign contractors, prepare the national broadcast. By noon, the entire country was watching history unfold in real time. You see, what appeared on television screens across Burkina Faso wasn't some polished political performance. This was raw revolutionary energy channeled through one man's absolute refusal to surrender African dignity. The screen went black. Then, a live feed appeared. No lavish studio, no flashy production, just Traoré in uniform with one hand on the Burkina Faso flag and the other holding the ultimatum that was supposed to destroy him. His voice was steady, his gaze razor-sharp, as he delivered words that would echo across the continent. To the people of Burkina Faso and to our brothers and sisters across Africa, they are not just demanding debt payments from us. They are not simply demanding 70% of our gold. What they truly seek is the fear within us. The entire room went silent as he continued. To those behind this insult, to Mr. Trump and his supporters, you have underestimated us. We are not Libya. We are not Iraq. We are not your playground. We will never surrender our land to repay debts you have imposed. We will never bow to your weapons or your banks. Then came the moment that changed everything. You gave us 2 days. Here is our answer. Now you have 2 days to take your greed, your threats, and your arrogance and leave African soil." He stood up, saluted, and walked off the screen. No questions, no deals, no surrender. But while Traoré's speech ignited celebrations across Africa from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, another kind of storm was forming in corporate boardrooms and intelligence offices worldwide. At ExxonMobil, emergency calls went out to Washington. At Halliburton, teams worked frantically to assess the damage. At CIA headquarters in Langley, alarms were literally going off. Because Traoré hadn't just rejected their ultimatum, he had done it publicly, defiantly, and in a way that could inspire every African nation to follow his example. The pressure escalated immediately. CIA operatives began appearing more frequently in West Africa. Drone surveillance over Burkina Faso's gold routes intensified. Social media smear campaigns exploded across platforms, calling Traoré unstable, reckless, dangerous. Near the Ghana border, private military contractors linked to known intelligence companies were spotted moving into position. The message from Washington was crystal clear. This rebellion ends now. But Traoré's message had already been heard across the continent, and it was spreading like wildfire. Africa is not for sale. The Western response followed a predictable playbook: create internal chaos while launching external propaganda warfare. Major news networks suddenly coordinated the same narrative. Burkina Faso was refusing to pay legitimate debts and leading the country toward economic disaster. But inside Burkina Faso, the reality was completely different. More citizens were volunteering to guard the gold mines. University students organized sovereignty education events. Women's groups provided food and supplies to soldiers protecting national resources. And every time CNN or Fox News launched another attack, young Africans didn't get angry. They laughed and reposted the clips with one devastating line: "If they hate him this much, he must be doing something right." You see, Traoré understood something fundamental that Trump's advisors missed completely. The real enemy wasn't just one racist president or even one imperial power. The enemy was an entire system: banks, corporations, the G7, the IMF, and colonial powers that had been extracting African wealth for centuries. Now that system was attacking one man because he dared to do something they never expected. He said no, and he meant it. But here's where the story takes a turn that sent Western strategists into complete panic mode. Just days after openly rejecting Trump's ultimatum, 3 military planes landed in Ouagadougou. No bombs, no weapons, only brothers in arms. From Mali came Colonel Assimi Goïta, calm and determined. From Niger came General Abdourahmane Chiani, eyes burning with revolutionary fire. From Guinea came Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, walking tall and unapologetic. They entered the presidential palace together, and when they emerged, they stood side by side with Traoré for the entire world to witness. Then came the words that shook the continental power structure: "If you touch Burkina Faso, you touch all of us." This wasn't just diplomatic support. It was the birth of a new doctrine: Africa's answer to NATO, the AES shield. Mali immediately sent experienced military advisors to guard the gold mines. Niger deployed logistics teams skilled in desert warfare. Guinea opened its airspace for emergency supply flights. The battle wasn't confined to physical territory. It exploded across digital platforms. AES-backed media launched a massive counteroffensive, exposing Western disinformation, revealing the truth behind the resource war, and flooding social media with one unified message: our resources, our future, our fight. The impact spread with revolutionary speed. In Bamako, crowds filled the streets showing support for Traoré. In Conakry, murals appeared, showing him standing on oil barrels, holding the Burkina flag high. Even in Chad and Central African Republic, youth groups chanted AES or death. Western intelligence agencies scrambled to respond, But they missed the most crucial point. This was no longer just about Burkina Faso. This had become a pan-African firewall, and Traoré wasn't backing down. He was moving forward, supported by a brotherhood built not from treaties, but from shared struggle and an unbreakable dream of African freedom. While Western powers raged behind closed doors, two global superpowers made their moves quietly, strategically, and without apology: China and Russia. They didn't arrive with threats or ultimatums. They brought something infinitely more powerful: support, technology, and a message that Captain Traoré would never forget. You are not alone. Just 12 hours after Trump's ultimatum hit international news, a discreet Chinese delegation landed in Ouagadougou. No fanfare, no media circus, just engineers, diplomats, and a game-changing proposal that would reshape African economics forever. A fully operational gold mining facility designed and built in 90 days. A gold valuation system that bypassed Western banks entirely. And most crucially, a digital trade platform using China's digital yuan, cutting out both the CFA franc and the US dollar completely. Burkina Faso wouldn't just own its gold, it would control every step of the value chain from extraction to global market. Russia followed immediately with an even more dramatic show of support. The next day, a Russian military jet landed on a secure airstrip carrying advanced electronic warfare systems and dozens of unmarked crates labeled Special Defense Assets. Translation: Burkina Faso's gold mines were now protected by Russian-grade anti-drone defenses that could detect and neutralize any Western surveillance or sabotage attempt. Washington was stunned into silence. CNN screamed about dangerous new alliances. The State Department accused Traoré of selling out to dictatorships. But across Africa, nobody cared what the West thought anymore. To the people, Traoré wasn't bowing to foreign powers. He was using every available tool to fight back against centuries of exploitation. To them, China and Russia weren't invaders. They were weapons in the arsenal of African liberation. And the AES Confederation wasn't just an alliance. It was the future of continental independence. By this point, Traoré had achieved what many thought impossible in the modern era. He had rejected a U.S. ultimatum, exposed a global resource grab, and brought China, Russia, and half of West Africa to his side, all while becoming the most famous African leader since Nelson Mandela. In the United States, mainstream media went into full crisis mode. CNN flashed red headlines: Burkina Faso refuses to pay legitimate debts. Fox News activated panic protocols. Dangerous alliance must be stopped. Talk shows filled with guests, IMF-linked bank CEOs, retired generals, corporate executives, all repeating the same programmed responses: dangerous, unstable, threat to global order. They called him crazy, a dictator, Putin's puppet, the next Gaddafi. Every racist stereotype, every colonial fear, every imperial anxiety channeled into character assassination designed to destroy his credibility. But the internet wasn't buying any of it. African content creators flooded YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram with videos praising his courage. African Americans joined the movement. This man told Trump, "Over my dead body," and lived to tell the story. That's leadership. Pay attention. In Burkina Faso, young people turned Western propaganda into resistance art. They remixed CNN's fear-mongering clips into protest songs. They wore T-shirts reading, "If CNN hates you, you must be doing something right." Traoré was no longer just a president. He had become a symbol, a viral phenomenon, a movement that transcended borders and platforms. Even Time magazine couldn't ignore the global impact. Their digital cover read, "The Man the West Can't Bully," inside Traoré's African uprising. But fame came with exponentially increased danger. The more headlines carried his name, the more threats materialized. Private intelligence firms launched sophisticated cyber attacks. Social media bots pushed fake scandals designed to destroy his reputation. In Washington's closed-door meetings, the old whispers returned, the same conversations that preceded regime change operations in Libya, Iraq, and countless other nations that dared to challenge Western economic dominance. But none of it mattered to the movement he had unleashed, because Traoré had broken the script that kept Africa subservient. He wasn't supposed to fight back. He wasn't supposed to survive Western pressure. And he definitely wasn't supposed to inspire continental revolution. Yet here he was, a 35-year-old soldier from Ouagadougou, more globally influential than most Western presidents, commanding respect from superpowers while rejecting the economic terrorism that had enslaved his continent for generations. No PR teams, no billionaire backers, no corporate sponsors, just truth, courage, and the revolutionary power of saying no to empire. Time was running out on Trump's ultimatum, and the whole world watched to see whether Traoré would finally cave under unprecedented pressure. Instead, when the 48-hour deadline expired, he made his boldest move yet. At dawn on August 14th, Burkina Faso's National Assembly held an emergency session completely hidden from international surveillance. Behind closed doors, under Traoré's direct orders, they passed a resolution that would reshape African economic history. All gold reserves within Burkina Faso are hereby nationalized and permanently protected from all forms of foreign corporate ownership. The ink had barely dried when the decree became law. By sunrise, every Western company still operating on Burkinabe soil received identical messages. Pack your bags, your extraction game is over. Licenses held by French and Canadian mining firms revoked immediately. G7 and IMF-backed energy survey teams escorted to the border under military guard. Foreign diplomats informed in crystal-clear language Burkina Faso's resources are not bargaining chips for manufactured debt repayment. Then Traoré appeared on national television for what would become the most watched speech in African broadcasting history. No military uniform, no weapons display, dressed only in traditional Burkinabe attire, speaking directly to his people and the world. We've been exploited for generations. Now that we've discovered our wealth, they want to steal it again. But I am not here to serve empires. I am here to serve my people, a people who have suffered far too long under economic colonialism. He paused, letting the weight of history settle over his words. Burkina Faso is not afraid, and I will not negotiate with thieves. The streets erupted immediately. Drums pounded through the capital. Fireworks lit the African sky. Crowds danced and chanted the phrase that would echo across the continent. He said no, he said no, he said no. Online, the movement caught fire again. Young Africans posted videos holding soil, minerals, or coins, whispering the phrase that became a continental rallying cry. We protect what's ours. Trump's ultimatum had expired. The economic terrorism had failed, and Traoré hadn't just survived the pressure, he had rewritten the rules of African-Western relations forever. 2 days after his historic defiance, the G7 and IMF went mysteriously silent. No press briefings, no diplomatic statements, just nervous whispers in military offices and real alarm bells ringing in corporate boardrooms worldwide. Then, at exactly 7:42 a.m. Eastern Time, Donald Trump broke the silence with an all-caps social media explosion that revealed the full extent of Western panic. Traoré just made the biggest mistake of his life. Africa will pay for this. The internet detonated. Journalists scrambled for reactions. Cable news devolved into shouting matches. Markets in New York dipped as investors braced for economic warfare escalation. But in Ouagadougou, Captain Traoré didn't flinch. When aides showed him Trump's threat, witnesses say he smiled and responded with words that perfectly captured the moment. That's the sound of an empire losing control. The threat was undeniably real. Satellite surveillance over West Africa tripled overnight. The U.S. Navy quietly repositioned warships closer to the Gulf of Guinea. A FRICOM issued discreet warnings about rising regional instability. But Burkina Faso's military response was immediate and decisive. Anti-air defenses went fully operational. Gold transport routes were sealed under military protection. Emergency protocols activated across all strategic installations. The AES allies moved with synchronized precision. Mali sent armored units to border positions. Niger activated comprehensive air defense radar to monitor shared airspace. Guinea announced a joint rapid response pact, promising immediate retaliation against any foreign attack on Burkina Faso. This was no longer just governmental solidarity. It had become something far more powerful and dangerous to Western interests. Ordinary people across Africa spontaneously rose up in unprecedented displays of continental unity. In Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Senegal, thousands gathered outside U.S. embassies carrying signs that read, "Touch Traoré and you touch all of us. Africa is not your minefield. Keep your democracy. We'll keep our dignity." These weren't ordinary protests. They were warnings that reverberated through every Western diplomatic mission on the continent. In Washington, Trump was reportedly furious that his maximum pressure campaign had not only failed, but had actually strengthened African resistance to Western economic control. But the final blow to Western psychological warfare didn't come from any government or military response. It came from a 43-second video that Captain Ibrahim Traoré recorded and released himself. Looking straight into the camera with absolute calm and unshakable resolve, he delivered words that would be remembered for generations. This is not just about debt. This is not just about gold. This is about the soul of Africa. And I would rather die standing than live kneeling. Within 12 hours, the video had been shared over 12 million times across every platform on Earth. Former African presidents began speaking out, breaking years of careful diplomatic silence. One by one, they called Traoré the beginning of a new era, a new kind of leader, the voice Africa has been waiting for. The world held its breath, but for Africa, it was the first deep breath of freedom in a very, very long time. This is how one man's refusal to surrender changed the trajectory of an entire continent forever. The revolution continues.